Today we're going to talk about perpendicular bisectors. This symbol means perpendicular. Intersects at 90. So we shouldn't have to write that word out anymore this year. We should be able to just use this symbol, the upside down T. That means perpendicular. All right, the first theorem that you need in your notes today is the perpendicular bisector theorem. It says that if a point is on the perpendicular bisector of a segment, perpendicular bisector of a segment, then it is equidistant from the ends of the segment. If a point is on the perpendicular bisector of a segment, then it is equidistant from the ends of the segment. And a picture of that would look like this. If you can think of a segment, you've got a segment here, and maybe that segment is AB. And it has a perpendicular bisector, which would be a vertical line that intersects the segment at 90 degrees, and it bisects it, which means that it cuts it in half. So the piece on the left from A to Y is congruent to Y to B. And that's what the tick marks mean. AY is congruent to YB. Let's call this line L. Line L is called a perpendicular bisector now. And what the theorem says is that any point along this line is equidistant from A to B. The converse of that theorem is also going to be true. And it says that if a point is equidistant from the endpoints of a segment, then it is on the perpendicular bisector. So before we draw a picture of this, I want to go back to this other picture. Because here's the picture you're going to see in your assignment today. There will be like a point X up here. And in its most basic form, if you're given the distance from x to a and it's 17 units, and you're asked to find the distance from x to b, how far is it?
17.
It's 17 units. Those two pieces are the same. Yes?
So if you were to write out the statement, you'd say AX is congruent to XB?
Correct. AX is going to be congruent to XB. If there's a point here, this red point, maybe it's point Z, it's on line L, isn't it? If the point is on line L, then it is equal distance to the end points of the segment. So Z to B would be congruent to Z to A. So now the converse of that statement says that if a point is equal distance from the endpoints of a segment, then it is on the perpendicular bisector. So in this example or case, you could be given a picture and be asked to determine some other information, meaning, let's get this here. We'll go M, N, O, and P. Now, if this distance is 18, if P to M is 18, and P to O is also 18, if those two distances are the same, and you read this formula, then what is the measure of angle PNO? Exactly. The theorem says that if a point is equal distance from the endpoints of a segment, which it is, P is equal distance from M to O, or it's the same distance, then it is on the perpendicular bisector. So this angle right here, PNO, would be equal to 90 degrees. So that would be 90 degrees. And if you're told that M to N is 12, and you're asked to find M to O. Exactly. Since P is equal distance from the two endpoints, then this vertical line is a perpendicular bisector, which means these two segments are congruent. So M to N is 12, and N to O is also 12. So if you're asked to find the entire segment, it's one of the pieces that you were given multiplied by 2, which is 24. Make sense? Straightforward enough?
Yeah.
Now, what I am going to encourage you to do is, if you're given problems today and they don't draw the picture for you, draw the picture. Or even if they do draw the picture again and fill in the information that's given. Okay? If you're told that a line is the perpendicular bisector of another line, draw it out. Write on the diagram what you know about a perpendicular bisector. And then fill in the information that they give you. And that'll help you solve the problem. Look at example 1A on the top of page 313. From this picture, you know that this vertical line L is a perpendicular bisector, isn't it? all right, it splits XY in half, and it intersects it at 90 degrees, which makes it a perpendicular bisector, which means that W is equal distance from X and Y. So if you're asked to find YW, or WY, what's YW equal to?
7.3.
It's 7.3. All right? These two sides will be equal to each other. Same with example B. Right next to it. Now the horizontal line. Let's see, you're told that this is 90 degrees, that this piece is 36, and this piece is 36. So you know that point A is the same distance from B as it is C. If that's true, then what does this horizontal line do to segment BC? It intersects it at 90, and what else does it do? It bisects it, so these pieces are equal to each other. If you're told that this piece is 16, and you're asked to find BC, then how far is it from B to C? 32, very good. Does everybody get the idea?
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at example 3 real quick, or example 1C. Yes.
The only thing I'm not getting is how you get in the BC. Cause if you add 36 to 36 to 32, it only equal 180.
We're not talking about angle measures. We're talking about side lengths. The side lengths don't have to add up to 180, but the 3 angle measures do.
Got it.
That's something completely different.
So how y'all getting? Yeah.
Because this was given.
16? Oh, okay, I see what
It's given. That's why when I ask you to look at the example, you need to look at the example with me. All right, in example 1C, the whole diagram is rotated. But here's the given information. All right, based on this picture, what would line L be called? What would line L be called? What kind of a bisector? It's a perpendicular bisector. It intersects at 90 degrees, and it splits a segment in half. It splits PQ in half, and it intersects it at 90 degrees. So it's a perpendicular bisector. If it's a perpendicular bisector, then any point along the perpendicular bisector is equal distance from Q to P. So 2n plus 9 is going to be equal to 7n minus 18. So if you're asked to solve for n, or if you're asked to find side PR, you have to set up an equation. You would make 2n plus 9 equal to 7n minus 18. Subtract 2n from each side. 9 is going to be equal to 5n minus 18. You can add 18 to each side. (27) equals 5n, and then divide by 5. 5.4 is equal to n. They ask you to find P to R. So if you need P to R, you take 2 and you multiply it by 5.4, and then you add 9 to it. 19.8. Any questions? Your assignment for today is going to start on page 313. Check it out, which is right below example 3 that we just did. So you're going to do check it out. 1A and 1B. And then a couple of pages over on 316. Problems 2 through 4. Two through 4 and 12 through 14. And that will be all.